with the year rapidly coming to an end and people being able to look back at 2024 in its totality, I don't think it's a stretch to say that it's been an absolutely insane year on all fronts. And world events, elections, and exposures aside, in the basketball realm, I truly feel that looking back on this year, both good and bad, it might be remembered as a turning point for everyone, especially as it pertains to the NBA. And this feeling, of course, includes the happenings in the modern league, where we've seen the emergence of superstars in the passing, or rather forceful snatching, of the baton from the old guard of superstars, and the redefining of timelines and what it means to age gracefully in the NBA for both the outliers and the average to above average role player. Teams have grown greater, fallen off, and all manner of interesting events that will surely become more significant as time passes and they're recontextualized. But for me, and I'm sure for many others, the year was bittersweet for many fans of mid to late 2010s basketball. And that's undoubtedly due to all of the retirements and silent exits from the game for so many NBA legends of the era, both big and small. And while a massive fanfare was made for the exit of Derrick Rose from the game, and rightfully so, recently, Paul Millsap announced his retirement, and I feel like his career, the narrative surrounding it, and the time that he played in are all really useful in helping to illustrate the importance of contextualizing greatness and our flawed misconceptions of it. So without further ado, let's talk about Paul Millsap and the rejects of greatness. Paul Millsap was never meant to pan out as well as he did as a basketball player. Now, that's of course said with the caveat that when you grow to be 6'7" and weigh 245 pounds, and you're the second of 4 kids to a not rich single-parent household, athletics may be a pursuit that you find fruitful. But even by these standards, Millsap was by no means meant to be a star or even a basketball player. After playing mostly football in his youth and throughout middle school, Paul wouldn't end up picking up basketball seriously until he was a sophomore in high school, where that same work ethic that was instilled in him from his mother would mold him into a truly talented ball player, especially for a guy who had only just started playing. But even with the improvements that he made, Millsap would graduate high school as the 80th player in the class of 2003 and the 17th ranked power forward, which, while better than nothing, didn't necessarily translate to a super highly regarded scouting profile, even after being selected as Louisiana's Mr. Basketball and a 4th team parade high school All-American. And so he ended up going to play college basketball for the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Now, even though the program had produced some legendary NBA talent in the past, the league was by no means a guarantee for Paul. But you wouldn't know it by the absolutely dominant campaign that he had. In his freshman year of college, Millsap would lead his team in scoring with 15.6 points a game and 12.5 rebounds, while also being selected as the Western Athletic Conference Rookie of the Year and making second team All-Conference. And these were stats that he'd build on in a major way in his next 2 years, as he'd average 20 and 12 his sophomore year and cap off his college career averaging 19.6 points and 13 rebounds a game, establishing himself as one of the most dominant forces in all of college basketball. And this is the first of many instances in his career where we see that even with all of his skill and talent as a player, he wasn't viewed with the same respect or in the same caliber as his peers, or even for the NBA. His scouting report entering the draft, even after finishing as a finalist for the Oscar Robertson Award for Player of the Year and an All-Defensive Player, focused far more on his small positional size and the questions surrounding his in-conference competition, even though he led the nation in rebounding 3 straight times, making him the first player to ever do so. So even after proving the legitimacy of his skill and his potential as an NBA prospect, Millsap watched on draft night as he fell to the 47th pick for the Jazz, finding himself as an underdog yet again. But just as he'd done through high school and in college for 3 years, Millsap proved himself not only as a player to watch for Utah, but as a guy who could develop into a true contributor for years to come in the league. And though his rookie averages of 6.8 points and 5.2 rebounds don't jump off the page, he ended up finishing 6th overall in the Rookie of the Year race above players like LaMarcus Aldridge and Rajon Rondo. But Millsap's development wouldn't stop there, and over his next 6 seasons with Utah, his production would continue to jump massively each year, and by the 2010-11 season, he would have his greatest statistical season in Utah, and what could almost be considered as a breakout year. Because after finally receiving the promotion to be a full-time starter, he would not only jump to a career-high 17.3 points per game, but add on 7.6 rebounds, and have a defensive emergence with 1.4 steals to go along with his offensive prowess. Hawks. This year had some absolutely monster offensive and defensive performances, including an early season matchup against the Heat where he absolutely torched the newly formed super team, dropping a career-high 46 points on 68% shooting and delivering Utah a tone-setting win early in the year. And this 2010-11 season was a dominant one, and served not only to establish a place for Millsap in the hierarchy of bigs that people seem to want to ignore, but also allowed him to showcase how lethal and versatile his scoring bag was, as his 45.3% shooting from the mid-range placed him in the 90th percentile of all bigs in the league this year. He'd also begin experimenting a little more with stepping behind the arc for threes, and although the sample size was extremely limited, this would be the first of a 6-year stretch where he was in the 70th percentile or above of big men taking threes, and he'd boost his three-point attempts each following year in Utah. So, all of what I'm saying here about his 2010-11 season is that it was absolutely more than enough evidence for him to prove, yet again, that he was an NBA player worthy of praise and opportunity that had been denied to him since his early days as a basketball player. That ability to not only step into a bigger role for the team, but thrive in it, despite the honestly overblown concerns about his size and whether he'd translate to the league, was yet another indicator of how talented, adaptable, and deserving of more praise Millsap's game was as a hooper. So even after the next 2 seasons in Utah, while Millsap's production stayed relatively around the same level, suffering a little bit year by year in the scoring department, by the end of the 2012-13 season, Utah decided to allow him to walk in free agency as the price for a double-double defensive machine forward like Millsap was far more than the $25 million extension Utah offered him. And instead, Utah chose to bet on the development of their younger bigs like Derek Favors and Enes Kanter, not only believing that they could replace what Millsap gave them on the court, but at the same time, that Millsap wasn't worth his asking price. And so, finding himself being doubted once again, this time by his own team despite having already proven his value and worth to them on multiple occasions, Millsap would join the Atlanta Hawks where he'd prove once again that counting him out and doubting his game was a foolish gamble. Because in only his first year with Atlanta, while the Jazz floundered to a 25-win season, Millsap had the best year of his career, averaging 17.9 points and 8.5 rebounds to go along with 1.7 steals and 1.1 blocks. But as we've seen, these numbers for Millsap were nothing new, and they only proved what everyone already knew, which was that Utah had messed up letting him walk. And the real revelation was just how willing and capable he was of shooting the 3-ball as he'd take a massive leap from the 37 that he shot in his last year with the Jazz to 206 threes in his first year as a Hawk, connecting on 36% of them in the process. This was a revelation for the league and served to place Paul in the 80th percentile of 3-point frequency amongst all bigs, securing his place in that early wave of floor-stretching big men that would soon become commonplace in the league not too long after. Millsap would also make the first of his 4 consecutive All-Star teams this year, and while the 13-14 year was an emergence for him on an individual level, the 14-15 season marked Millsap's emergence as a leader along with an unprecedented level of team success. This year would see the Hawks have an unreal jump in their record, going from a 38-win first-round exit the previous year to a monster 60 wins with 4 players being selected to an All-Star team and with Millsap essentially acting as the head of the dragon. On top of leading the team in scoring, Millsap found himself in the 90th percentile of usage rate for all bigs in the league and the 93rd percentile of assist percentage, where he assisted on 15% of all of his team's made shots. This was an incredible year for Millsap and the Hawks as a whole, and for as much and honestly even as valid as the claims are of this being a one-off year or an anomaly, or even meaningless because of what happened in the playoffs against Cleveland, the fact of the matter is that this was a special campaign that not too many players in NBA history are able to say that they were able to replicate. Furthermore, even though the 14-15 year is where much of the focus for Millsap's career went, he had another defensive emergence in the 2015-16 season, where his 1.7 blocks a game placed him at 8th in the league in blocks per game, and his 139 blocks on the year made him 5th in the league in total blocks. And Millsap's Hawks tenure is perhaps the best place to end the tale of his career, because even though he'd undergo another transformation in three-point attempts and efficiency by filling in a different veteran presence role for the Nuggets, that tail end of his career and the silent sailing off that tends to happen to high-level, fringe superstar guys is really the purpose of this video. Because even with the way that I've outlined the various peaks and valleys, consistent overcomings of doubt and disbelief by scouts and front offices alike, in the framework of NBA hot take debate world, Millsap and players of this ilk are seen as little more than stepping stones or pawns in furthering the narrative of someone else's greatness. See, the goal of highlighting players like Millsap or Trey Burke, as I've done in the past, or a guy like Kemba Walker, and all of those guys that existed in the periphery or outskirts of the mainstream NBA fandom, only serving to elevate the careers of another, greater player in the eyes of most, is to really unpack how flawed our idea of greatness is from a fan perspective. Too often, it seems, guys like this will retire from absolutely banger careers filled with iconic moments and duels against the legends of the game with little fanfare to be used as pawns in debates for players who, frankly, outachieved them in the courses of their careers. And understand that I'm not arguing against the contextualizing of legendary accolades for players like LeBron, D-Wade, or others when their careers are discussed. But rather, I'm trying to push against the way that these other guys are sometimes erased or minimized to being peons that were conquered by those Hall of Famers. And I'm not even saying that we need a whole movement or parade for every above average or moderate NBA star that existed when they retire. And there should be a proportional celebration for what you were able to do in your career, because generational greatness does deserve praise. But if the player meant something to you, whether that was inspiration or adoration for their on-court skills, or even admiration for their temperament in the approach that they took to the game that helped you see that same level of fire, and whatever it is you chose to do, it all means something far more than any small debate. So I'm wishing a happy retirement to Paul Millsap, and to all of the other elite level guys who were able to accomplish something special in the league, even if that something special was making a single all-star team or proving to a few arrogant scouts and GMs that your value was far more than what they thought it was. Understand that even if there's a rejection of your legacy and greatness in the mainstream, those who were truly there, who truly watched, understand and appreciate what you all gave to the game. But with all that being said, that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.